We could talk about Star Wars for hours, but we won't. I'm going to ask you one more Star Wars question. I'm going to ask you a couple of writing questions. But there was a passage in there that stuck out to me that I think maybe speaks to some of your maybe philosophy on storytelling. I want to run it by you. Um, it's, uh, it's kind of addressing our casual racism and watching the Star Wars universe. I'm going to read your own book to you, but only for a sentence. The Beskilus, the Barpa busted out laughing. So did Sev Cataban, whom everyone swore had to be a distant relative of Lando's. He wasn't, because they looked so much alike. They didn't. So why not just introduce a bunch of characters of color and clear up that problem for the Star Wars universe, so nobody is ever again thinking, oh, Mace Windu and Lando, they must be related somehow. Why not take that out, since you're going to have so many characters in Wikipedia? But you chose to address it directly, and I'm sure you have a good reason for why you did it, and I want to know what that was.
Uh, it's sort of just how I do. I might not have a good reason. I hate to disappoint you. It's a great question. I guess you could say that it felt like the most sort of like it. I know it's not. I want to say it's sly, because it's not sly. I mean, obviously you picked it up, but it felt like a sort of innocuous way to slide in there that everything maybe isn't necessarily all as rosy and well maintained as we are kind of given to think sometimes. I mean, it's a similar story like we were talking about with history before. You know what I mean? I don't think like the Star Wars galaxy is somewhere where they've had the same history that this country has had, for instance. But I do think there's a good chance that, you know, characters that don't look alike might confuse each other for each other. And then finally, it's like, you know, I think it's always, there's a lot of weird, the whole conversation about what real world elements kind of slip into Star Wars is always really fascinating, I think. And I think it's really fascinating to see how different authors address it and different movies address it. But what we can't do is pretend that it doesn't happen, because it happens all the time, you know. And I know you were, but I think there is kind of there people sometimes want to be like, oh, but it's Star Wars, like there's no, you know, it's a total right. But you know, Star Wars has always dealt with xenophobia and you know, different questions of history and things that feel very resonant for this world. Fascism, you know, like neo-fascism, particularly in the new trilogy, and people worshiping old rules of things, you know, that were devastating to millions of people. I think Claudia Gray's books do that really, really well. Like Bloodline, you know, really draw a very clear parallel between the people that worship the empire in the new era and like the Confederate statues that we still have up in different places. Like without being like beating anybody over the head with it, you can't read it and like pretend that those things aren't in conversation on some level. So as the writer, I think your job is not to be like, oh, racism is bad. You know, like if I have to tell you that, then you're not even who I'm talking to. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know that, then we're not having the same conversation. I think the job is to say like, here are some dynamics that are at play in our world that can also play out in different ways in a different world. And, you know, where do we see things come together and where are they different? Yeah, I mean, so I guess it's that. It's also that like Star Wars, you know, hasn't always been great and is still not great about particularly women of color. You know, we've had Lando since almost the beginning, but Black women tend to not show up at all. When they do, they die within 10 minutes, if that, or if not a couple seconds, you know? And so the in Galaxy, there may not be a lot of like race problems. Who knows? That's kind of like, we don't know. But certainly in the cinema world, there's a lot of room for growth. And, you know, someone put it on Twitter the other day. Someone actually posted that very line. It was like, this is especially funny because anytime a Black character shows up in an ad for a Star Wars movie, everyone assumes it's one of Lando's cousins, which is exactly what happened with the new one. I mean, the woman might very well be his daughter. I mean, she does like capes, apparently. But it's just hilarious because that is how the discourse runs around it. And so, you know, it shows up. I guess it's all to say, there's a lot of conversation to be had between the real world and fantasy realms. And fantasy gets better if we can have that conversation in a smart way. Again, not in a like a beating over the head way, but in a smart way that makes us all think more about it and sometimes like recognize things in the text.
I'm gonna say that's where Solo lost me. Slight spoiler: Thandie Newton is in the movie, and I sit down and watch. Oh, we're gonna watch Thandie Newton kicking butt in space. I'm gonna enjoy this. I can't wait to see her in the sequel. But no, that was
Yeah.
a huge disappointment. Oh wait, have you got any plans to go back to the Star Wars universe?
Oh, I do. Yes. So it was announced at the Star Wars celebration event that I'm part of an initiative called Project Luminous, with some amazing writers, Kevin Scott, Charles Soule, Justina Ireland, and Claudia Gray, which is basically a team of writers that is working on a new project that we cannot discuss at all in any possible way. But it's happening and it's going to be amazing, and it drops next year. And
Can you confirm it will be set in space?
nope.
Nope. We'll find out.
I can confirm it's going to be amazing. And there will be more info about it in the next, couple of years.